Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the inaugural $5,000 Modern Open hosted by Apex Gaming here at their home store in Caldwell, Ohio. I'm Tandy, joined by Ross Merriam. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
And today we have finished one round, but we have the entire rest of the tournament to bring you today. That's 7 rounds of Swiss and 3 rounds of top 8. Round 1 looks like all creativity all the time. Do you think that's going to continue here, Ross?
Well, it's definitely not going to continue this round because we brought spice
for
round 2.
You got the old, what's his face from Dune? You bring in the spice. He hasn't seen Dune. He hasn't read Dune. You know.
Is spice like the currency in Dune?
It's actually just like magic dust that makes you super powered.
Yeah.
And it's actually just like leftovers from the big worms. Like I think it's like their excretions of some kind. It's gross.
So it's kind of like Slurm.
Yes. And in fact, I actually would wager that Slurms McKenzie is based off of.
Slurms McKenzie is based off of Spuds McKenzie.
Okay. Well, regardless.
Budweiser ads in the 80s.
Yeah. Anything else
That's
you want to?
well know.
Yes. Okay. Well, we are going to be watching not creativity this round, perhaps in our first feature. Do you want to tell us about the matchup and the players?
Yeah. So we have Nicholas Eiginger playing a very cool-looking Naya scam deck. So we've got Furies and Solitudes along with Ephemerates to get that value engine going, but it's backed up by some card advantage for things like Wall of Omens and Imperial Recruiter that goes well with Ephemerate, and it uses those to set up an infinite combo between Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker and Felidar Guardian, both of which are tutorable with Imperial Recruiter. So that's sort of the end game, is to set up that combo. There is one copy of Vivian of the March to set, that can set up the combo with any 3-drop.
Okay.
By finding Felidar Guardian, blink the Vivian, then you sack the Felidar Guardian, you get Karmic Guide, return the Felidar Guardian, blink the Vivian, then you sack the Felidar Guardian, you get Kiki Jiki, you copy Karmic Guide, you return the Felidar Guardian, and then you blink the Kiki Jiki and go from there.
All right. Well, now that you're done reading your novel, I have seen this deck before, but it was way heavier on the Vivians and utilized a 3-mana creature that lets you kind of sneak attack Planeswalkers into play. Yeah. I know Andrea Mangucci was playing that like a year or two ago, right when the Vivian Planeswalker came out.
This is much less of a straight combo deck. It's more using the combo as the finishing blow, and instead playing more of that mid-range value game with the
Fury
Ephemerate,
plan. Just very powerful against creature-based decks, and Solitude Ephemerate also just very strong.
Yeah, get some mana creatures in there to, power these things out, and you got yourself a sweet deck. So we're going to see what he is up against this round. Already took down round 1.
Jacob Fumich on Murktide.
Oh, Fumich, one of the stronger players on the Apex Gaming series over Season 2. Going to be playing Blue-Red Murktide as the opponent. Should be a pretty interesting match. And players are ready down in the feature match area, so let's not wait any longer. Let's head on down and see who takes it down here between the Naya Scam versus Murktide. On your right, Nicholas Eiginger playing that Naya Scam deck that we were just talking about from Ross. Honestly, has anyone ever done anything fair with Karmic Guide before? I feel like that card always results in infinite combos.
Yeah, that's the only time I've ever seen it, so.
All right, just a tap land and Sacred Foundry from Eiginger, and Jacob Fumich leads off with Ragavan, starting off here quick. See if Eiginger has an answer for it. If not, Ragavan threatens to be brutal. Eternal Witness in hand, just leads with Wall of Omens. What a brick wall here, huh?
Block.
Yeah. It does that very well. Let's see if Fumich has an answer for it. Could maybe take it down with Double Bolt and then get in with Ragavan to get one of those treasure tokens.
How does it feel to double bolt a Wall of Omens?
Not great. Probably about as bad as it feels to get hit by a Ragavan. I like an attack here. This is going to allow for 1 bolt post-combat to take it down. And but this does leave the shields down for Fumich. He has a counterspell in hand, but can't quite deploy it yet thanks to being only up 1 mana.
Interesting that Fumich played the Fire Island on turn 1. Suggests to me that maybe he kept a 1-lander and ripped the Steam Vents.
Yeah, maybe. Now Eiginger's way. We're going to fetch with a Windswept Heath main. Now we can go get a Forest and play this Eternal Witness, getting back format staple Wall of Omens.
Yeah. Now, notably, there are a lot of basics in Eiginger's list. I see 3 plains, 2 forest, and a mountain. Does have 2 copies of Magus of the Moon to find with Imperial.
I was actually just about to ask, are we playing Blood Moons? That sounds great. really cool build from Eigenger. We'll see if he's able to beat one of the baddies in the format. And Izzet Murktide. We're going to play Knight of Autumn. This main deck card here, a great sideboard card in Pioneer, but here it looks like the Singleton going to be doing some work, and he's just going to make a 4/3. And Fumich here with the Bolt is going to line up perfectly on it to allow the Ragavan to jam.
Looking at Eigenger's hand, I see a Magus of the Moon. I see the one of Eternal Witness. That's another tutor target for Recruiter. Not sure what the other card is, but yeah, this Knight of Autumn not looking so good.
All right. Bolt takes it down. Ragavan chunking in, and you're starting to see why Ragavan is widely regarded as one of the best one-drops ever printed in the conversation with Mother of Runes, Deathrite Shaman, and a number of others. We find Imperial Recruiter off the top. If we have a land to play, Fumich can cast that and go get something like a Dragon Trace Channeler out of his deck.
Could find a Ledger Shredder. Could find another Ragavan if you really wanted it, but yeah.
All right, there's the Imperial Recruiter. It does have, it needs power 2 or less, so yeah, backup Ragavan also potential, but decides to just hold up Counterspell. I like the play. I think Recruiter for another creature, not really where you want to be. Mostly just want to protect yourself and just attack with Ragavan a bunch.
Is there a Counterspell in here?
I believe so.
Yeah.
All right, there's Counterspell. I believe that's a Tempest Counterspell. Oh, no, it's not. That's one of the Modern Horizons ones, I think. So that's going to take care of the Eternal Witness. We'll see if Eigenger wants to do anything else. Passes the turn.
Now, with so much mana, Fumich is going to be able to leverage this expressive iteration quite nicely.
All right, 2 more damage from the Ragavan. Finds Ignoble Hierarch. Now, that could be a nice little pickup here. That plus the treasure tokens allows him to get it down. The Exalted could be good, but expressive iteration is the play first. Let's take a peek. Bolt number 3, Odawara. No, Spell Snare Odawara. Yeah.
Oof. Not great.
Spell Snare is maybe okay. You see Wall of Omens. You have to assume that there's tons of like 2-drops in the deck, right?
I assume the Odawara gets exiled and played, and then it's just a question of which of the spells you want. The Spell Snare is not that good in the matchup. There aren't a ton of 2s in Eigenger's deck, but the Bolt obviously not great here when you already have a pile of burn.
All right, looks like we are going to deploy the Ignoble Hierarch and back Nicholas Eigenger's way. Let's see if he has a nice play here. Something that costs 5 would be ideal. Fumich would need a counterspell, and we know he doesn't have one. We're going to play a Arid Mesa and fetch immediately, so maybe a Fury or Solitude coming down here.
And one of those would, especially Fury, dealing with both creatures, would immediately stabilize this battlefield. And at that point, Fumich is kind of out of gas. Does have the Fire Islet he can cash in for another card, but just a handful of red removal decided to take the Bolt off of that iteration, which I do think is the right choice.
All right, and here's a Fury, the big baddie from Modern Horizons 2. This thing has been chewing up creature-based decks for almost 2 years now, right? Card is so powerful.
Fumich cashes in the land, finds another removal spell in Unholy Heat. So now it's just a question of which player can find sources of card advantage first.
All right, Bolt takes care of the Fury, but the damage is done. Fumich does pick up a counterspell, so that will allow him to prevent the next big play from Nicholas Eigenger.
I see a Felidar Guardian in hand. I think that, that's an Imperial Recruiter. This, will definitely meet the counterspell.
Because that starts a bunch of chains, so you kind of just take the wind out of their sails by countering it, but at the very least, it can just go get more copies of itself and kind of flood the board with 1/1s.
Okay. Well, both players kind of, not exactly on empty here, but we're at the stage where players are pretty low on resources. There's no real clock on either side, so the top of the deck's going to matter quite a bit in the next, say, 3 turns.
So Fumich's hand looks like it's just all reactive, just all removal spells, not even a counterspell. 2 copies of Unholy Heat and a Lightning Bolt. Those will obviously kill things from Eigenger, but his whole deck enters the battlefield stuff. So like Wall of Omens, Imperial Recruiter, these are lining up very nicely against spot removal.
Yeah, this Wall of Omens makes the Felidar Guardian another 2-for-1. And
this just makes me want to play Saheeli now. Just Wall of Omens, Felidar Guardian, Saheeli sounds great.
Avalanche Riders, let's go.
Whoa! Bingo, bango, bongo. We're going to blow up your land. Hunter Spirebluff can now taste a munch.
And so we have land instant sorcery creature on Fumich's side, so there is Delirium.
All right, going to blow up the Avalanche Riders. That 2/2, very scary.
Ooh. We're going to dash this Rogavan. Which would have to cash in the treasure to play the red removal spell to finish off the wall. Oh no, we have Unholy Heat. So we should be able to deal with this wall. And Eiginger getting a little punished. Could have gone for the Felidar Guardian last turn. I guess that would have just met the Unholy Heat on the wall as well. If I'm Eiginger, I just want to get 2-for-1s as much as possible. But I don't think there was a window for him to use the Guardian on the wall there.
All right, we do have Delirium, so we are going to kill the wall. That's going to allow us to dash the Rogavan, get in for 2, and then replace the treasure and maybe get something cool off the top.
Just a land.
That's... What is that?
Oh, no, that's Ephemerate.
Yeah. But now, well, he could Ephemerate the Rogavan, and then it would be permanent. I'm not sure he really wants to do that, though. Makes it vulnerable to things like Fury, Sorcerer Speed interaction.
Not worth the treasure.
All right, here's a 1/4. I block. Gonna blink the lands and jam an Ignoble Hierarch back to Fumich's way.
Yeah, and Fumich has another Unholy Heat. No real reason to do this on end step.
All right, so Ephemerate is gonna protect the Felidar Guardian from the removal spell, and we're gonna go back Fumich's way. Not even gonna play the Rogavan. Choosing not to play the rebounded version. We're going to attack for 2 and Felidar Guardian beatdown commence.
Interesting plan when you know there's a Rogavan on the other side.
Well, maybe just really into chum blocking. Gotta get him dead, man. Just sit back, you know. Maybe attacking with Ignoble for 1 was better.
Yeah, I think I would have liked that more.
Fumich gonna fetch, finds another Steam Vents after he got one of them chewed up by the Avalanche Riders. Eiginger on empty mostly, I think just a land in hand. We'll see if Fumich peels anything great. That's a Ledger Shredder. It flies.
Yeah, so now he gets to play Shredder, then dash the Rogavan. Doesn't have a card in hand, so the Knive's just going to mill, but could, just get a counter on this.
Yeah.
Another Rogavan. Yeah, didn't want to draw that one. Gets a counter on the Shredder. Oh, I wouldn't.
Yeah, not the best plan, I don't think, but, definitely wants to prevent. I think perhaps made the misstep with the Felidar attack and sees that he needs to keep the Rogavan from doing anything. Solitude off the top, a big draw, and now we have plenty of ways to stop Rogavan from doing much. Felidar Guardian going to attack again.
With Fumich tapped out, there wasn't really much of a reason to chump block that Rogavan last turn. Could have kept the Ignoble around, and now the dashed Rogavan, you're going to have to trade. These Felidar Guardian attacks are a little loose. I think Eiginger not really thinking through his turn, playing a bit on autopilot here, and could end up very much punishing him, because this is a game that's going to come down to just 1 or 2 cards.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very much an attrition battle, but here's a big draw. Murktide, Regent from Jacob Fumich, and Nicholas Eiginger is in trouble.
And losing the Solitude cuts us out of so many outs. Obviously, we could draw a second Solitude, but now we can't draw Ephemerate or, some other way to, or a Felidar Guardian to blink that Solitude and deal with the Murktide Regent.
All right, here comes a big attack for 8. Eiginger down to 3 in lightning bolt range. We'll see if Fumich has it. No, it passes the turn back. Eiginger draws for turn. Finds
Fury?
Looks like a red card. Most red cards don't kill Murktide Regent, and we're packing them in. Fumich takes it down. Game number 1. Explosive fashion peeled Murktide at just the right time, and Eiginger, perhaps with some mismanagement of blocks and resources, gets pummeled by the Rogavan, and Fumich able to leverage that large body later on.
Okay, taking a look at sideboards here for Eiginger, there are 2 copies of Sudden Shock, 1 Sanctifier in Beck, 3 Chalice of the Void, 3 Endurance, 1 Spellskite, 1 Collector Oof, 1 Kataki War's Wage, 1 Giant Killer, and 2 Force of Vigor. I like the Giant Killer as a tutorable answer to Murktide Regent with the Imperial Recruiter.
Okay.
I like Sanctifier and Vec just as a difficult to answer card that can disrupt Delirium.
Yeah, disrupts Delirium, but also just ruins Rogavan, right? All the removal is red, and so it just makes Rogavan irrelevant. And as you saw that game, Rogavan was the primary threat until you find Murktide Regent.
I like Endurance as another way to disrupt the graveyard without committing a full card.
Agreed.
And the big question for me is, does Eiginger like Chalice the Void? If it comes down early, it can be quite good. Chalice on 1, stopping Rogavan, stopping DRC, stopping Consider, stopping, Spell Snare.
Yeah, but there's also that awkwardness between your own ephemerates, right? But the deck is built to potentially utilize the chalices after sideboard, maybe even cutting the ephemerates so that they're not as bad for you. I know that whenever I play with Murktide, Chalice of the Void on 1 is problematic.
Yeah, but it's also a very weak card late, and it's going to force some very specific sideboard because it's not just ephemerate. There's also 2 birds and 3 ignoble hierarchs in the deck, so a bunch of mana creatures. Obviously, the mana creature you can play on turn 1 before playing a Chalice of the Void, but you can't always depend on your draw working out that smoothly, and that you're going to limit your top decks. As we saw in game 1, that game really just came down to top decks, whose deck had the most juice coming, and the Ledger Shredder into Murktide Regent for Fumich was enough to take it down.
Turns out Expressive Iteration digs pretty deep.
So taking a look at Fumich's list, pulling that one up.
My guess, the most stock Murktide list you've ever seen. Fumich is a man of principle, and he says the best deck is the best deck, and I'm playing that.
Yeah, his deck is labeled as best deck. So.
Called it.
Interestingly, is playing a list with 3 main deck Blood Moons.
Nice.
I don't know how well he knows Eigenger's list, but if he knows how many basics Eigenger has, those Blood Moons are definitely coming out.
Well, he saw at least 3 that game with multiple fetched, kind of like main phase and for not a really serious reason. So I would imagine that he knows that the Blood Moons are going to be somewhat ineffective, so likely cutting them.
In the sideboard, though, I see 2 copies of Dress Down, 3 Engineered Explosives, 2 Flusterstorm, 1 Force of Negation, 1 Fury, 1 Minor Misstep, 1 Mystical Dispute, 1 Subtlety, 1 Tormod's Crypt, and 2 Unlicensed Hearse. I like the Evoke Elementals. I think Subtlety and Fury will both play well in this matchup, and I like the Dress Downs to potentially stop opposing ones. And there's just a lot of creatures with abilities where Dress Down can give you some minor value at different points, so...
What are your thoughts on Unlicensed Hearse to prevent like Eternal Witness chains and such? I know that that's a big deal in the Ephemerate decks.
Only 1 Eternal Witness in Eigenger's list, so not worth it to me, but not sure how well Fumich knows Eigenger's deck.
Well, here is the money card from Nicholas Eigenger out of the sideboard. Chalice of the Void on turn number 2, X equals 1. That's going to lock down a bunch of Fumich's cards. We'll see if he has a way to get it off the table. Not in hand. Has Ledger Shredder, but a whole bunch of 1s. Likes the top card with Consider.
Fumich's deck doesn't have a whole lot of ways to get a Chalice off the battlefield. 3 Engineered Explosives in the sideboard, but nothing like a Braid or any sort of Shatter effect.
Well, I have a feeling that Jacob's in for a world of hurt this game. It looks like he has a Ledger Shredder here on turn 2, which is possibly his best route to victory, but all of his interaction and card draw is essentially stifled now.
Ledger Shredder with the Connive can let you loot away some of these dead ones, but you really need those ones in order to actually trigger the Connive.
Right. I do see from Fumich's side, I think a Subtlety hanging out in his hand. The art on the full art Subtlety versus the Otawara look relatively similar, so I'm not 100%, but it could come up big in a turn or two as a hard cast threat that prevents a creature from coming down from the Naya Scam deck.
Looking at Fumich's hand, I see a lot of lands and a lot of red removal spells, and that is not going to help him against this Chalice. Eigenger going straight for a Sanctifier, and back. He looks very confident in this game. Tells me that he likes his sideboard plan, and he knows what his plan is in the post-board games in this matchup. Which makes sense. Murktide is generally the most played deck in these tournaments. If you're going to bring a brew, you better have a plan for this deck.
Right. Well, Fumich leads with Mishra's Bauble. My guess going to Chalice check here. Going to go Lightning Bolt, targeting that. It's going to get counter, but we are going to get the Connive. Draws a Rogavan. And every single 1-mana thing needs to be discarded here in order to leverage the counters. Without a way to really get the Chalice off the table, so many cards in his hand are effectively dead. Does have Subtlety, but no blue card to pitch. Going to take a look at his own top of deck. Maybe going to shuffle it away with the Misty Rainforest to see if he can draw maybe a blue card. We'll see.
Well, maybe this Shredder just gets really big. But with a Fury in Eigenger's hand, I'm guessing it's not getting bigger than 2/4.
You know, I was wondering who Ross was just waving at just then. Was it just for the camera?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. I was like, I'm looking at the guys over there, and none of them were looking at us. All right. Here is a pitched Fury. Eigenger going to go for the removal spell on the Ledger Shredder before it gets too big. And Fumich here with a bunch of red spells and a basic island in play means that he can't really play 2 spells to connive and gets punished. Here's Sanctifier and Vect. That's going to come down after the Fury. It's going to exile red cards from the graveyard, and it's going to be tough for Fumich to deal with.
Yeah, just a hard card. At this point, I think Fumich really needs to find the namesake. Murktide Regent is a card that can get him out of this. We know there's a Consider in the graveyard. It can at least get it to a 4/4. You really like to get it to a 5/5 to avoid any later Furies. Shouldn't be that hard to find another spell to get into the graveyard beforehand. Though the iteration in Fumich's hand will get exiled by the Sanctifier since it is both blue and red.
All right, back Fumich's way. Draw for turn. Has land number 4, so could go for a subtlety here. That one does apply a lot of pressure. If Nicholas isn't careful with his life total, could be problematic. But looks like he's fetching basics, still at 18, still a decent life total. Fumich here can ambush Viper and eat the Sanctifier Invect with the subtlety, and it looks like that's what he's going to do.
That's a great mode.
Yeah, big Restoration Angel vibes on that one, right?
With Igenger's deck, one of the things that you worry about is the ability to apply pressure. Unless you can stick a Fury with like the Ephemerate, that sort of scam plan, all the creatures, because they're creatures that have ETB abilities and generate value, don't have a lot of power and toughness. So you give your opponent a lot of time to draw out of cards like Chalice of the Void. And that's what we see Fumich trying to do.
All right. That counter was from the Ledger Shredder. If we could get that removed from the table, appreciate it. See if the spotter can do that for us in just a moment. Expressive Iteration finds Ledger Shredder and a land. We're going to play the Ledger Shredder likely. Shields are going to be down. A lot of dead cards in hand, but overall, looking pretty good. Nicholas Iginger going to fetch. Needs to have something like Fury or Solitude next turn to get back in it.
Yeah, evoked the Fury a couple turns ago and might even be regretting that, though. If that first Shredder got to a 3/5, that could have been a big problem. Not sure what is left in the hand, but is, pretty down on resources from the evoke. I see a Stomping Ground in hand. That looks like a Windswept Heath. Drawn for turn. Yeah, just not much going on here. And Fumich is essentially in the driver's seat, picks up another iteration. And this can allow a Connive.
Finds a bunch of dead stuff.
Yeah.
2 lightning bolts and a land. Gonna use that to connive, I guess.
Not great, but...
Okay, it's gonna get countered, but we do get the connive. Draws Dress Down, a nice pickup here, and any of these red cards can go. That counter's gonna go on the Ledger Shredder. We're gonna be attacking for 5 here. Does Iginger have anything?
Dress Down effectively protects Fumich's creatures from Iginger's removal. All his removal is based off of those elemental Solitude and Fury. Doesn't have anything like, Unholy Heats or Bolts of his own, especially with the Chalices in the sideboard. They wouldn't be good now anyway. So Fumich, I think, looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. These flying creatures are doing a great job of ignoring things like Future Wall of Omens or whatever. So Iginger, in the face of that Dress Down, is honestly just getting bricked here for a full turn cycle. And I don't know that there's one draw in his deck that can save him after that. Maybe, even Ephemerate doesn't do it right because of the Chalice on 1. So it would have to be a nice string of cards, and I don't think that they exist.
Yeah, I think that was an Endurance.
That's a nice pickup. Gonna main phase that. Now, those lightning bolts in the graveyard from Fumich's side are there because of the Leyline of Sanctity, or the... Anyway, here comes Endurance. That's gonna shuffle everything back in and essentially just take Fumich off of Murktide Regent. Might want to play the Dress Down here, but I don't think so.
I really like the main phase Endurance. Murktide Regent is one of the few very scary cards from Fumich. If there is a counterspell in Fumich's hand, there's no way you're getting the Endurance down around it. Mm-hmm. Fumich has plenty of mana, still has the 2 mana up, so might as well play around Murktide when you can.
All right, that lightning bolt is exiled. Both of those should be exiled. And we're back Fumich's way. Now the Endurance with Reach here threatens to eat the Subtlety, and Fumich is going to have to essentially connive that Ledger Shredder up to 4 power before he can really start attacking it again. There's a Ragavan.
Ooh.
Does Iginger hit him with a Chalice? He does. Or not. Maybe he misses it.
Third time's the charm on the chalice check.
All right. Draws consider. Still has dress down.
Trying so hard.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a that Ragavan sneaking through the chalice is really big. If it was just the two creatures, you can't really attack with both. Then there's no real good attack. Now we could send everything. Endurance probably has to jump in front of the subtlety.
Well, I don't think Fumich expected the Ragavan to resolve, so it technically has summoning sickness. It's not dashed.
Probably wanted to dash that. Well, if you dash it, then it just goes back, and it's probably not resolving again. But Eiginger kind of flooding here, so...
Counterspell, a nice pickup. An attack all out here, not so bad, but much worse now that the Imperial Recruiter's untapped.
Yeah, definitely. So we're just going to kind of stare at each other for a bit. And Fumich has some bangers to draw. Really just needs to draw another spell to be able to connive. We found a spell snare.
Could use that to connive if Eiginger ever plays a 2-drop, right? Ooh, another Chalice of the Void from Eiginger. I wonder if he's going to play this on a X equals 2. Maybe locked out. He doesn't have that many 2s in his deck, but that shuts off essentially everything except Murktide Regent from Fumich's side.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. Oh,
Play it for 0. Interesting. Maybe to protect from Chalice or from injured explosives.
Also just shuts off baubles and doesn't hit anything in your deck.
Fair point.
So at this point, Eiginger has to find stuff too. Oof.
Well, there's creativity. Wish you had done it for 2, I bet now. But here's Murktide Regent off the top. That one's going to get cast this turn and maybe still able to hold up Counterspell / Dress Down.
So I imagine this is going to be 3 cards in graveyard. So yeah, we have now. He's 1 short. He needs to play a land in order to play Murktide for 4 mana and delve 3, and then still hold up 2 mana for Counterspell. And if we can also discard a spell, a useless spell to the connive, suddenly you've got an attack for 4 this turn, and then a lethal attack next turn with a counterspell in hand.
All right, Fumich really thinking about his sequence. This is essentially the most important turn of the game for him. If he probably puts Counterspell in hand and Murktide off to the side, maybe doesn't have an untapped land, so maybe can't play the Murktide and hold up Counterspell.
Murktide's getting exiled, so it's getting cast.
All right, does have the fetch.
Yeah. This looks pretty well set up for Fumich. Can, fetch for another basic island, still at a very healthy 13, play the Murktide Regent, trigger Connive, discard a useless spell, have a 4-power Ledger Shredder, attack with the Shredder, have 2 lethal attackers next turn in the face of the 1-blocker Endurance, counterspell for whatever Eiginger can draw off the top, and I think he's going to take this match in impressive fashion, beating that turn 2 Chalice on 1.
Yeah, beating Chalice the Void from a deck where, 60% of your spells are shut off is pretty disgusting, if you ask me. Has a handful of 2-drop interaction now, and, maybe this is a significantly different game if just last turn Eiginger just goes Chalice the Void for X equals 2 instead of 0.
Yeah, Eiginger still doesn't have anything going. I actually think there were 2 big decisions from Eiginger's side. One was Imperial Recruiter for Sanctifier and Vec. Potentially could have found some sorts of card advantage off of the Recruiter and started, churning through his deck. And that might have been better. And the choosing to evoke the Fury might have been, much better off just having 2 Furies in his hand that he could hardcast a couple turns later.
Well, I think the 2/4 Ledger Shredder was pretty scary for him. The Chalice of the Void shuts most of the stuff down, but trading 2 Furies for 2/4 Ledger Shredder doesn't feel very good.
Okay, well, Giant Killer can chop down. Chop down has a mana value of 3. So that will answer, at least hopefully for Eiginger, the Murktide Regent. But the counterspell should put the kibosh on that.
All right, here comes Giant Killer. We're going to play the alternate mode, and Counterspell takes it down. Jacob Fumich 2-0 versus Nicholas Eiginger. And the Naya Scam deck was honestly what we were trying to feature here, but the big baddie, Izzet Murktide, beats him up. And 2-0 now for Jacob Fumich. Again, another great player from the Apex Gaming tour that we've been running over the last couple years. Season 3, we'll have more information on that later today. Very excited for some of the things we got going on for you.